Hey guys, welcome to the second video in Python network programming. In the previous video, I have described a very brief about sockets and how we can use sockets in Python. Now in this video, I'm gonna create a very basic TCP server and TCP client for making our sockets to use them in practical programming scenarios. Now the basic structure or basic example of client-server architecture is our internet. Basically, we are having browsers installed on our systems or on our machines. They work as a client, and we are having web servers on which web applications are deployed. Now the client, that is our browsers, send different kind of request to the web servers, invoking with different kind of IP addresses and value and port number value pairs. Now the server listen for the request and check about the security of a particular user, whether the request is legitimate or not. If it finds the request okay, then it gonna process it, and it check out and it defines or it do what the client wants, or it just provide the resources or provide different kind of files using protocols and everything. Now the security part is far away from, of course, but we will discuss it later on, and we will also implement this including our practical programming sessions as well. Now for this video, we are going to create a basic TCP server and client. Now I'm going to use QPython, and these programs that I'm gonna create right now, we will use as a frame for our further applications. And in next videos, I will provide, or I will add and modify these scripts or these code to add different kind of functionalities. For example, in next video, we are gonna process, or we are gonna transfer file contents over client and server. And in next video, I'm gonna define, or I'm gonna add multi-threading in our server scripts, so that we can handle different client connections at the same time. It will use our server resources efficiently, and it will make our server to dynamically interact with clients with different kind of a different number of clients at the same time. So now I'm using the console for creating a TCP server. Now for TCP server, we need to use sockets. So for this, I'm gonna import socket. Now after importing this, we need to create a socket object, that is socket dot socket. And here we are going to use our IPv4. So we are using AFINet, and again I need to use TCP connections, so I'm going to use our sock stream. As I have described these constants and this method to create socket object, now we will process further, and after creating a socket object, we need to bind our socket object to a particular IP address and a port number. So for example, I am having different kind of applications and one server. I deployed an application on a particular server on any random port. The server will have a specific IP address, and again I deployed another web application on that same server that runs on port number 80. So now both the applications, when any client invoke that application, it will just go to the same IP address that is associated with the server. But how we can distinguish between these two applications that are deployed on a particular server is using a port number. Now the request contains a IP address and a port number value pair, so we can check and we can define that which application we need to invoke for listening or for performing our different kind of tasks. So for this, we need to bind our socket object to a particular IP address and a port number. For this, we need to use the bind method available in socket module. This bind method takes one argument that is a tuple of two elements. Now if you are not familiar with tuples, do check the Python beginner tuple section. Now this bind takes one argument that is tuple of two elements. The first element is an IP address and the other element is the port number that we require. So here we are using 127.0.0.1. This IP address is conserved for local host processing, and I am creating this TCP server and TCP client on the same machine, so I'll send the client request to the same machine. So I'm binding this server to the local host addresses, that is 127.0.0.1. So after binding it, what the server does, the server always listen to new requests of different kind of clients. Now our server will also listen for requests, but as I told you that I'm going to implement multi-threading in next to next videos, here I am defining one as the argument in listen method. This listen method takes the argument of number of connection that our server is gonna handle or can handle. So I'm going to just provide one, because I am going to handle just one connection that with the client that I'm going to create afterwards. Now after listening, when server going to listen about the request, whenever it finds a request, it check for the security purpose, and if it find that request okay, it will gonna accept it. We are not implementing any security features, or we are not implementing any security measures over this server, because at this video, because this is introductory video about how we can implement a server, we are going to use the accept method for accepting our client request that we listened. Now there is a surprise. It's not a surprise, it's just a fact that the accept method that we are going to use to accept a particular request that we listen gives us two objects. The first object is, I have defined it as CONN, that is connection. Now this object is a socket object. This socket object defines that now at the client, from the client side, we got a connection, and this connection is gonna use for further communication between the server and the client. The socket object that we created, the sock object that we created before, is at the server side to initialize the server, to initialize the connection between clients, to listen for requests. But now when we accepted a client request, now we are going to further communicate with the client using this connection, that is CONN object that I have got by accepting the request of the client that I got. Now the second object is ADDR. I have used a short form for address. Now this object consists of the address information about the client. Now this object consists the address information and the port number that client has used to connect to our server. Now when I hit enter at this stage, it will halt and wait for connections establishment and listening. Now here my server is just waiting for further connection, because for the further processing it requires a connection. Now I'm going to create another console. I'm going to use another console to create a client. For creating a TCP client, again we need to import socket, and again we need to implement, or we need to initialize our socket object. The fact is, within the server we are binding to a particular address and port. Here we are going to connect to it. So for IPv4 the socket of inet, then the socket.sockstream, that is for our TCP connections, and after hitting enter I have created a socket object for the client side. Now for this for connecting, for making requests to the server, I am going to use a connect method that is available in socket module. Now this connect method takes again the single argument that is a tuple of two elements. Now the two elements are, the first element is the IP address of the server that we require, that we want to invoke, and the second element is the port number of again the application that on which port it is described on. So in short form, the tuple we used in that bind method when creating that server is gonna used here for the connecting between the client and server. Now when I use this connect, I'm gonna again use the 127.0.0.1, because as I'm dealing with the local host, again we need to define it as string, and the port number 1345. This should be the same and exact port number that is required for a particular application or a particular server to invoke it, because if we do not use a specific port and if we use a different port here, we will got an error message saying that the port is not in use or port is closed. So so the first thing is, my server is waiting for connections and my client is ready to connect to a particular server on that server that we are going to create. Now when I hit enter, this will give me to write another, it's give me the console to write another application, and here in this my server side I am again getting this, now the console, and it's not waiting for any further application or any further requests. So for the second thing, or for the server, this is our basic thing. Now we will use connection, that is CONN object, for further processing. Now here we can send data from server to client by using send method. This send method takes different kind of arguments, basically one. If you require to provide your information within, just you cut the information within different kind of strings and place that with the comma, you need to use send all method. Now for the send method we are going to just say in a message connection successful, and for this connection successful, after I send it out, it will show me that how much bytes or how much characters I have sent it on. Now on the number 2, on this my number 2 console, that is on client, I haven't received or I haven't got any sort of message, because I haven't received anything. For further communication or for receiving the data that is transmitted by the server, we need to use our sock.recv, that is our received method. Now this receive method takes an argument, that is number of bytes that we gonna receive in one go. Now I'm using 1024 for this, and why we are using 1024, it's nothing nothing just fixed, we can use any number that you want. This is being specified that this amount of bytes of data it can handle or it can receive in one go. If I am sending a huge set of data, it will receive 1024 for the first time, and if I am setting up in a loop, then it will receive 1024 another the next 1024 bytes in the other go. So when I hit enter for the receive, I will get the message as connection successful. Now if I want to send something from client to server, I will again use the same scenario of send and receive. Here I've used sock object because I have created a socket object, that is sock. I've connected with the same sock object, and now I'm receiving this because I am the client. I am just one entity. I am connecting to a particular server, but at the server side we are using different socket objects. That sock is for server side initialization, and CONN is for accessing or for communicating to a particular client. Now if I want to set it as, now want to send from client, I will use again the same thing, sock.send, that this is a client, or you can set anything. And after I send this, I send 16 characters or 16 byte of my data, and now at the server side I am again using the CONN object because this is gonna use for our further application, for the communication between that particular client and this particular server. So I'm gonna receive again the 1024 bytes, and when I hit 1025, that doesn't matter, you can use any number, any sort of fixed length you can. So here this is the client. Now this is our console based. I just wanna make you just familiar with the scripts also. I know that you know how to use scripting because you know how to perform the how to write the Python program on console and on scripts too. But here when we write it on console and we just write the connection.receive or connection.send method, basically the connection.received method, it will show us the result at the next line. But here in this, when we use scripts, then we need to store the result in a particular variable, and then we need to use, or then we need to print our result at in the next line, or wherever we want, or we need to process it, we can process it on. Now the most important thing I didn't do, it's my mistake, because we need to close the connection socket objects that we got, the CONN object, that it's the 13th line here in this TCP server script. It need to be closed. So the best practices says that you need to you need to do household operations onto your programs. So in this case I forgot to do that on console, but in scripts I just open the script to make you familiar with scripting, because here we are having very little differences between console application programming and this scripting application programming, scripting programming. So basically this completes the task for our this video, and in the next videos I've described what I'm gonna do. If you have any doubts, do ask in the comment sections, and if you need me to make any tutorial of any topic, then do email me with the topic and specific request to my email ID that is described in the description below. So thank you very much for watching this. I hope you enjoy this video, and do like and subscribe and hope for your best future. So thank you.